What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for your patience. I know we had this set for 3:15 p.m. this afternoon, but I had some escapades at the Department of Motor Vehicles this afternoon. I'm picking up Ryan. We're getting a rental car. We're driving to Washington, D.C., and I just realized today that my license was expired. So I had to get up to the DMV, get all that taken care of. We are in the clear. We are good to go. We are legal, street legal, if you will. This is Shout, a Buffalo Bills football podcast, brought to you as always by Topps Friendly Markets. And are you ready for Sliders Sunday? This Sunday, when the Bills face the Washington Commanders, every time you visit slidersunday.com, you have a chance to win free products, brand swag, tailgating gear, trips, and more. One chance per day, no purchase necessary. Ryan Talbot, how are you, my friend?
Hey, I am doing great. Looking forward to our little road trip tomorrow and heading up to DC for our event Saturday, game Sunday. It's going to be a great time.
This is going to be our longest time in the car together because we've done the Detroit trips. We did the Cleveland, I believe, or something else. What do we do? I think Detroit.
A few times.
What are the other?
Lovely,
what are the road
lovely
trips?
Detroit. I'm trying to think of just driving. I think Detroit's literally been because we flew to Houston, flew to New Orleans, obviously. I'm trying to think if there are any other car trips. So this will be
Detroit, which was like the one time we did it stateside, which was about 6 hours. This one will be about 7 hours. What kind of treats do we like in the car ride?
You know, as long as I have some coffee tomorrow morning, I think I'll be okay. I don't even need any treats necessarily, but coffee and I'll be good to go.
So when I come through Olean to grab you, I just want you to know that I'm going to be rolling at about 15 miles an hour. I'm swinging the door open. You just got to jump in. So it's going to be like that scene. Did you ever see League of Their Own?
Oh, yeah.
The baseball movie. Absolutely. It's going to be like when the trains leave in and they got to kind of jump in, throw their bags in and everything. That whole deal. Like I really want you to do that for us.
Well, then I'll probably end up in the ER and you'll be going solo. But I'll give it a shot, Parrino. I'll give it a shot.
All right, Bills versus Commanders. It is going down on Sunday at 1 p.m. And this is the preview show. We're going to get into all of the fun matchups and different ways that these two teams match up against each other. I think the place we have to start, we've gotten a couple messages in the subtext, Shout Buffalo Bills Insider text line about the weather. What is the latest, Ryan, that you're seeing on the weather? And actually our own Kayla Sterner, producer extraordinaire of the podcast, I believe just wrote a story on that. Should be out any minute.
Yeah, and one of the questions specifically was more about the field conditions at FedEx when it rains hard. I was able to find an article from 2019 when they hosted the San Francisco 49ers, and FedEx Field was an absolute slop fest, absolute mess, swamp. Players just bashed the field. So if there is a lot of rain, if it hits, it could turn into a very sloppy affair. That game ended up being a 9-0 win for the 49ers, so there wasn't much in terms of excitement with this weather. So, you know, it's going to be something to monitor. We've seen conflicting reports in terms of what it's going to be Saturday, what's going to be Sunday. Obviously, I think as we get closer to game day, we'll have a better feel for what it's going to be like on the field.
I think it's going to come down to like which team can kind of run the ball better. I think that if you were putting these two teams side by side, they're pretty similar actually with the ability to run the ball and early on in the season. I mean, James Cook is coming off a really good performance. They have obviously Antonio Gibson over there, Brian Robinson, who's kind of come on and taken over that lead back role. So they got some horses as well. And that's to me where that offensive line for Washington, that's their strength. This is a team that has been able to run the ball at times this year. And the Bills are going to have to prove again after last week's really strong performance against the run in Las Vegas that they can do it again this week, especially if the weather is a problem.
Yeah, Brian Robinson Jr. has pretty much been the lead back for Washington through 2 weeks. I think 38 carries over their first two games, where you have Antonio Gibson at about 5 or 7 in that 5 to 8 range. So he really hasn't been much of a share in the backfield. It's been Robinson Jr. leading the way, and he's been an effective back. He's done a nice job so far. But to Buffalo's credit, Running the ball, it hasn't been a strength the past few years. I feel like they've looked pretty good so far this season. I like how they're utilizing James Cook. He is the clear and established RB1 for this team, but then they're letting Damian Harris get mixed in the right situations, those short yardage, goal line areas. Same with Latavius Murray. So that three-headed, back, so to speak, that the Bills have, with Cook leading the way, of course, it is promising, at least the way they're coming off of running the ball last week.
Mm-hmm. Let's get into the matchups that we're most interested to watch. And I want to start off with one. I mean, obviously, we're going to have to spend a few minutes here talking about this Commanders defensive line. It's a special unit. I mean, they go 4 wide with Chase Young, Montez Sweat on the edge, Jerron Payne on the inside, and Jonathan Allen, who's one of the best 3-technique defensive tackles in the NFL. To me, the matchup that I'm watching is Chase Young coming back from that injury. He hasn't played much over the last couple of years. He is going to be mostly going up against Deion Dawkins. And through 2 games, Deion Dawkins has not only been the highest graded, according to Pro Football Focus, offensive lineman for the Bills in pass protection, he's given up the fewest pressures. And I think those things kind of go hand in hand there. Only 3 on the season. He hasn't given up a single sack. The 2 sacks that have been charged to offensive linemen, 1 to Spencer Brown, 1 to Connor McGovern. Connor McGovern, I don't think we've even talked enough about. This is a huge spot for him this week against the Jonathan Allen as well. I'm really looking at that left side of the Bills offensive line and how they're able to hold up. You're not going to keep those guys out of the backfield. Stephon Diggs said it best this week. I asked him, when you're a wide receiver, how do things change for you when you're going up against a defensive line group this deep? And he's like, a coach told him years ago, and Adam Henry still kind of preaches this. When you have that kind of talent on the D line, it's a race against that D line because they're going to get pressure. They're going to win one-on-ones. They're going to get in the backfield. It helps to have Josh Allen, but the receivers have to be really effective. And I think that, on that left side with McGovern and Deion Dawkins, they got to hold up.
Yeah, and I'm kind of flipping the script for my matchup to watch. I'm looking at Greg Rousseau versus Charles Leno Jr. One knock on Sam Howell is he holds onto the ball a little bit too long at times. He's taken a lot of sacks already through 2 weeks, and I think that the way Rousseau has really come on early on this year, he's a guy that can win his individual matchup, get after Howell, and maybe create a turnover for this Bills defense in game. So that's one matchup. Obviously, Dalton Kincaid, if the Bills can pass in this game, weather depending, I think that he's another guy that you're going to want to watch and see how he gets utilized. The Bills do have a clean bill of health, so you'll also see Dawson Knox out there. But in the passing game, I'm kind of keeping an eye on Kincaid. I could see him having a breakout game in week 3.
I'm going to take you back to 2021. We talk about that game. The Bills won against the Commanders 41-23, I believe was the final score. Let me bring that up here. Yeah, 43-21, excuse me. And I'm going to hit you with a little trivia question, Ryan, a little fun in the middle of this episode. What do you think? Who were the top rated pass rushers in that game? All 4 of the top defensive linemen, the first round picks, played in that game. What were the top 4 pressure players in that game? Who recorded the most pressure in that game? Go.
For Washington?
Yes.
Payne, I would think, would be up. I thought the interior, he was up there.
Payne is number 1 at 11 pressures, according to Pro Football Focus, 9 hurries. Who's number 2?
I felt like the interior had a really good game, so I'm almost going back to that. But I want to put Chase Young last. I feel like he had a really frustrating game. Where is he at on this list?
He's second. He had 6 pressures.
Oh, okay.
Nobody had a sack, though. Like they didn't record a single sack in that game, and that I think was part of the frustration. Yeah. Number 3. Can you guess who's number 3? It's not one of the top 4.
Oh, was it Tim Settle?
It was Tim Settle. Had himself a big game, and probably one where the Bills probably watched that tape when they were thinking about signing him, and he had himself. What are you drinking there? What is that? Is that one of those ghost
C4
drinks? C4.
No, I love the ghost drinks, but these were 2 for $5.
Are you going to work out after this, or are you just like rolling with that?
I am going to do my second workout of the day. Thank you very much.
Wow, look at you.
Shoulder
Ryan.
day, Parrino.
Bring out the pipes. Let's see. Bring out the pipes. Oh, yeah.
They're
he's going to make
dancing
a dance a little bit.
They're dancing for you. So you got to watch this live, Bills Mafia.
Yeah, here's the thing I see a lot. People taking like energy drinks or like pre-workout drinks just for fun. Like, just as part of their regular day. I don't know. I can't support that. I can't get behind it. Anyway, it was Tim Settle in that game. But to me, that is the recipe to beating this team, the one that the Bills used in that matchup a couple of years ago. You have a really elite defensive line. They got to they were getting in the backfield, 29 pressures according to PFF in that game. And Josh Allen, it did not matter. He was almost perfect. He had 24 attempts, 14 completions. That was Taylor Heinicke. Excuse me. 32 for 43, 74% completion percentage, 358 yards, 4 touchdowns. And here is another big key to the game: 0 interceptions.
Yeah, that is the key to the game. And it goes back to what I was saying about Kincaid maybe having a breakout game in this matchup. I think that Allen has to get the ball out on schedule, get the ball out quickly in this matchup. I had a question recently. I did a spot with St. Bonaventure, SBU TV, about how can the Bills O-line hold up against the D-line, or can they stop them? And I said, you can't stop that D-line, but you can frustrate them. And Josh Allen getting the ball out on schedule to guys like Kincaid, Knox, Cook, getting the ball quickly to Diggs, that's the way to do it. Because, if you're going to hold the ball all day long, yes, Allen's mobile. Yes, he can stiff arm and break tackles, but you're not putting yourself in a favorable situation a lot against a D line like this. So I think you're going to see a lot of what we saw last week. Again, weather dependent, weather permitting, it is getting that ball out quickly in the passing game. If they have to lean on the run, I think they can fare pretty well in that area too. I think the Bills have looked a lot better in that regard as well.
One of our shout text insiders, Sheila, here in the comments asking if all their defensive line played completely in that game. They did, all 4: Chase Young, Sweat, Allen, and Payne. Ryan, I kind of forgot about this game from this player. Cody Ford with a 3.1 PFF grade pass block in that game. He gave up 12 pressures, 10 hurries, 2 hits. Talk about an upgrade a couple of years later. What they have now in Osiris Torrance, that's a much better place to be in.
Yeah, it's a huge upgrade. And, Cody Ford, the Bills were high on him, but they moved him around a lot. And I'm not saying that's the reason he hasn't had any success in this league, because he's had a few stops now and it really hasn't worked out. But that was a terrible game for Cody Ford with all the pressures coming in. So now that you have Osiris Torrance coming off of back-to-back strong starts as a rookie, you feel really good about him. I like what I've seen from McGovern at the other guard spot. And I feel like Deion Dawkins, who you mentioned earlier in the show, we talked all summer about, is he going to have a bounce back season? He had a little bit of a letdown year. I think that he's held up very, very well through 2 weeks, Matt. And it's a really promising sign of what we're going to see throughout the course of the entire regular season.
Let's focus in on this offense for the Commanders. What people have to kind of get ready for here. Sam Howell, you mentioned him a little bit at the top. Listen, he does hold on to the ball a little bit. I think that sometimes when you're a younger player, going through your reads, maybe it takes you a little bit longer to get there. But when he's gotten there, especially last week against the Broncos, a couple of really special touchdowns. Logan Thomas, former Buffalo Bills tight end, he made a sensational touchdown grab last week, suffered concussion on the play. He has been ruled out. He won't play. But, you have Terry McLaurin. You have Jahan Dotson. You have, a young guy in De'Ami Brown who played with Howell at North Carolina that they're really high on as well. And then, of course, Curtis Samuel, who's that kind of – I think there was a little maybe interest in him a couple years ago with the Bills because of kind of all the, Debo Samuel comparisons, the kind of things that he can do there. But to me, where this game could get tricky for the Bills, their defense against screen passes has not been good.
Oh.
Eric Bieniemy has not batted an eye about wanting to lean into that part of his scheme early this season. I think they're going to try to get the ball in Robinson and Gibson's hands and see what they can do with it.
Yeah, and why wouldn't you? We saw what the Jets were able to do in week 1. Breece Hall with some big gainers. Delvin Cook with a big gainer in the screen game. Last week, Josh Jacobs had some success in the screen game as well. So until the Bills show that they can stop it, that they can limit the yardage on these plays, I think every team should be trying it. And Bieniemy, being one of the best offensive minds in the game, is certainly going to target any weaknesses that he perceives this team having. So I see that. One wide receiver, Matt, you didn't mention, he's a little bit buried on the depth chart. Jamison Crowder, former Buffalo Bill, signed there recently. So I don't know how much playing time we'll see from him, if at all. But, they have a pretty decent depth chart at wide receiver, especially at the top. McLaurin being a great wide receiver. I like what they had in Dodson or Jahan Dotson as well. So it's going to be an interesting matchup for sure. But the screen game is where the Bills need to come in early and make those stops and try to change Washington's game plan.
And I'm really looking at the Bills interior. I mean, it's going to be a huge game for Milano, Terrell Bernard, full practice today for all of the, different parties. And I think we got to make a quick note on the Christian Kirksey hype train that was started on Wednesday night. It came to a screeching halt on Thursday when he decided to call it a career. And, from what I've heard, it's just like there was a lot of, obstacles to him getting a jersey on game days and getting into a role that I think that he's used to playing. And I think if you're a guy in this league that's played that long and at that high level, especially the numbers that he put up in Houston last year, you probably want to, be a part of game day, like on Sundays. And if you can't, maybe you just decide to kind of, step away from the game a little bit. And who knows, sometimes guys retire, take a step back, maybe like go spend some time with the family, reset, recharge the body, maybe make one more run at it in the off season, try to sign on with somebody and go to a camp. Who knows? He's still somewhat young. I don't want to say young, but he's not, I wouldn't call him old, but a decision that he made. And I think that probably tells you a little bit about what he saw in terms of Terrell Bernard inside the building, how they view him, how far he's come in a short amount of time, and the way he played in the first 2 weeks without any preseason. And maybe he thought that the road to playing time was going to be difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like you said, he's not young. He's not old at 31, but he may have said, okay, this just isn't going to work out for me in terms of playing time opportunity. I will say he was very complimentary to the organization in his retirement. No, just a brief statement, but thanking them for everything. The Bills had nothing but positive things to say. So, at least it didn't come out of left field necessarily. They had good talks about it, and they kind of agreed it was best to have that parting of ways with him retiring and calling it a career. They have AJ Klein waiting in the wings, a guy that knows the system, that can come into this practice squad, and if anything happens, he can get elevated. But you're right, it comes down to the play of Terrell Bernard. And he struggled early against the Jets, got swallowed up a little bit, but played strong down the stretch. I thought he had a nice game last week at home against the Las Vegas Raiders. So stacking those performances up from where he ended in week 1 to how he played in week 2, it's clear he has a long leash with this coaching staff. They want to see him on the field. They want him to develop. So it was probably going to be very difficult for Kirksey to see any action or meaningful action on Sundays.
My biggest concern might surprise some people for this game. It's not Terrell Bernard. It's Tre'Davious White going up against likely Terry McLaurin, who, for my money, when he is healthy, he's as good as just about anybody in this league. Like he is, if he was like as healthy as like a Jamar Chase has been, for the most part, Chase had that brief like stint where he was banged up, but he's had consistency. He's been available for a little bit more. I think McLaurin would be in those conversations with Justin Jefferson and Devontae Adams and Stephon Diggs. He is healthy right now, and that's, to me, a huge problem. I mean, that you look at the coverage on that touchdown pass from Howell to McLaurin last week against the Broncos, and I thought the Broncos had pretty decent coverage. And a couple things there. Number one, Howell's going to err on the side of not caution. He's going to err on the side of just craziness because of how good McLaurin is. Like, he's going to take those kinds of chances. And if you're not buttoned up at the second and third levels, that's a matchup to me that scares me a little bit, because I don't think Tre'Davious White through the first 8 quarters of the season has looked like we saw him look at times in the summer. And maybe this is a huge opportunity for him to announce that he's back and have a big time performance and show up in coverage. But he's got to have that. I mean, there's going to be some reps there for Christian Benford, of course, but Tre'Davious White is the big money cornerback on this team. He's got to play like it against a tough matchup in McLaurin.
Yeah, it's a prove-it game for him after a rough 8 quarters to show that, he can still be counted on as that cornerback 1 for the Bills. When he came back last week, late in the season, after, Thanksgiving time of the year, he didn't look like his old self, and that was to be expected. He had been out of action for almost a calendar year. It takes getting up to speed with those lower leg injuries or those leg injuries in general for cornerbacks. But after the whole off season, after having training camp and the preseason, I was thinking he was going to be a little bit more up to speed so far, and he just hasn't looked the same. And, maybe we'll never see pre-injury Trey White again. And I don't want to say that is the case for sure, but he does need to start showing up and having these performances that we're used to seeing. Sunday will be a great opportunity for him. Coming off of a strong performance, my player to watch is Spencer Brown. I want to see how he holds up. The Bills aren't going to be able to have a similar type of game plan necessarily to help him out on Sunday against this Commanders D-line, just because they're so strong across the board. So Brown's going to have to win some of those matchups individually. He's going to have to try to build off of last week's performance. So he is my player to watch. If he holds up and gets the job done, I think the Bills end up winning this game.
Sheila asks thoughts on re-signing AJ Klein, and I think it's interesting for this week. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he's elevated with Terrell Bernard kind of nursing that lower leg injury all week. It seems like he's on set to play this weekend, but your options behind him aren't great. And if he suffers an injury in game and you need to kind of rely on Tyrell Dodson, I don't know if you want to be in that spot if you're the Bills. And maybe they feel comfortable with that. And maybe there's other alternative plans they can kind of deploy. You got to wonder, has AJ Klein been working out since the start of the season? It's only been a couple of weeks, but you'd be surprised, especially at his age, how quickly things can, got to ramp back up. And he's obviously not getting reps, considerable reps during the week outside of scout team. So I'm not sure what the move will be with AJ Klein. It wouldn't surprise me if he's not active and they just, hope that injury is something that Bernard could play through and maybe it's just not an issue on Sunday.
Yeah, they have to hope for that, or that, Dodson would be able to step up in that role if something were to happen. But Klein, yes, he's 32, a little bit older than where Kirksey was, but he certainly knows this system. That shouldn't be any kind of hang up for him. You're right. It's going to come down to what kind of shape is he in? Has he been working out the past few weeks? I have a feeling the Bills probably told him to, stay in shape, because if anything happens, we're going to bring you right back. There's few teams that I think were interested in the AJ Klein sweepstakes, but Buffalo is one of them. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if he has been doing his work at home, waiting for that call, waiting for that opportunity.
It wouldn't surprise me if you want a little bit more intensive Buffalo Bills coverage, and you can get that by becoming a Shout Buffalo Bills insider. Text 716-528-6727. Get yourself a 2-week free trial just for checking it out. And then if you want a month free trial, just send me a DM on Twitter at Matt Parrino. Email me, mparrino@nyup.com. The Shout text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Byer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street, Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give him a call at 716-852-1234 or check out litrolaw.com and let him know the Shout Boys sent you. All right. Also, we've already mentioned this, but it is Sliders Sunday, right? Like it's big time right now at Tops Friendly Markets. Everybody's trying to get their situation for the game on Sunday set up, and you could start your Sliders Sunday winning streak with King's Hawaiian this football season. Earn rewards to redeem for free products, brand swag, tailgating gear, and more. Visit slidersunday.com for details. All right, Ryan, where do you want to go next?
Well, I mean, we can get into score predictions here pretty soon. I think we've touched upon the matchups. We've touched upon the questions in the subtext. So
before we get to predictions,
sure.
Yeah, before we get to predictions, because I think we'll go there next. Let's just quickly touch on the Bills' offense, because I think you mentioned it at the top of the show. I wanted to kind of give a couple thoughts on that as well, because I think the Bills do have to run the ball, but you go back to that the way they were able to have success a couple of years ago against this defense, which was applying pressure, was getting the ball out of Josh Allen's hands early, and it was Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders who did a lot of the work. So I'm looking at Gabe Davis. I'm looking at Dalton Kincaid, and we'll see the usage of Dawson Knox. Maybe he's 100%. Maybe he's able to play the full allotment of snaps that they're used to. But I think Josh Allen getting the ball out to Dalton Kincaid and putting some pressure on that second and third level. I like Jamin Davis, the linebacker for Washington, but outside of that, the safeties don't blow you away. Fuller and Forbes are fine. I think Forbes is competitive. He has the ability to take the ball away, but he's also susceptible to getting beat on the deep ball. We saw it with Marvin Mims last week. So I think this is a game where, as long as the weather holds up, and like we mentioned in the early part of the show, it could be two different things. We could have a monsoon. We could have no weather at all. It's finicky there in the DC area. So we'll see, but I think this could be a Kincaid game where you try to look to get double-digit targets his way and let him kind of operate.
Yeah, I think it's Benjamin St. Juste that will be maybe lined up against him at times as well, and that's a matchup that I think favors Kincaid if you can get the ball into his hands. So I do like this matchup, especially based on the way the Bills found success the last time these two teams played. So in the short passing game, like I said, Kincaid is my player that I think is going to have a breakout performance, but I also think the Bills have shown that they can run the ball. They're willing to run the ball. They're willing to utilize all three of their backs in a given manner, obviously with Cook getting the bulk of the carries. So if it is a sloppy, rainy game, the Bills will and can adjust if necessary.
All right. Prediction time, Ryan Talbot.
All right. I'll go first this week. Yeah, I have the Bills winning this one 24-13. Keeping it a little bit lower scoring, I suppose, than a week ago with the higher predictions because of the weather. I think that it might be a little bit sloppy early on. I wouldn't be surprised if we had a low-scoring first quarter in general. But if the weather clears up, which is what one of the news channels here in the area said is expected to happen as of this time, then I think Josh Allen can start throwing the ball around a little bit on this field, putting up some points in that short passing game. Bills win. They move to 2-1 with a huge AFC East matchup on the horizon.
Whew. Yeah, I mean, as soon as this game ends, we are going to flip the page. I mean, like getting into that Miami Dolphins matchup, I was actually just texting with Marcel Louis Jacques. I love these weeks when I get a chance to see our good buddy. But I got the Bills winning 24-16, pretty similar to your score. If the weather isn't crazy, I'd probably tick that up to 31 for the Bills, just because I think the weather, if it's super muddy out there, you mentioned it, there's been games in the past at that field that just have been a bit messy. So I like the Bills to be able to move the ball consistently against this defense, minimize some of the mistakes, and try to throw them off with the ability to get the ball out of Josh Allen's hands quickly. And here's the thing with Russell Wilson. I felt like last week he threw for 308 yards, and I feel like he short-circuited in the second half. I feel like Josh Allen got that out of his system against the Jets in the first week, and I think he's going to come into this situation not as good of a secondary. I think you can win at all three levels. I think the Bills have more offensive weapons than the Broncos, although Marvin Mims looked great. Jerry Jeudy, funny thing about him, every time I watch the Broncos, I'm left underwhelmed with Jerry Jeudy. And I don't know if that's how they use him or the player that he is at this stage, but he doesn't do it for me.
I think he was just coming back from a hamstring or lower leg injury too. That might have been his first. I know he didn't play in week 1, so first game of the season. But I get that. I understand there were high expectations for him coming out, and he hasn't reached those yet. But when it comes to this, the Bills, and how you mentioned Russell Wilson, Wilson got a huge chunk of those yards on that Hail Mary late in the game too. So I do think that Josh Allen is going to perform better against this Commanders defense than Wilson did a week ago. Obviously, a better quarterback by far at this point in their respective careers, and more weapons for the Bills. So that's why I still have them being able to pull this one off on the road.
I think Josh Allen's going to probably run it a little bit more too in this game than he did last week. 3 carries, and I think Ralph Wilson Sr. prediction. Matt will have to listen to Ryan snoring in the back seat all the way to DC. He will be in the front seat, and no sleeping around allowed. No. You got to be you got to be the navigator.
That's right. I'm ready. I can't wait.
All right. So I do think that Josh Allen will probably try to run the ball a little bit more this week, and I think that's kind of the perfect anecdote to what they're going to offer on their defensive line. They're going to get upfield. They're going to, Chase Young and Montez Sweat get wide. I think they're going to try to put a lot of pressure on both of those tackles. And if that's the case, find a lane and go. I mean, Jamin Davis, a guy I think you really have to watch out for. He's a really hard tackler. I think he gets sideline to sideline pretty well, but it wouldn't surprise me if we see a couple of big Josh Allen runs.
Yeah, no, they kept him in check last week in terms of the utilization. It wasn't so much what the Raiders are doing. The Bills were limiting his carries, 3 runs. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw some actual design carries for him in this matchup too. And obviously, once he gets into a routine, that's when he starts to thrive as a runner.
If you want to thrive as a party host, visit the Tops Deli section and look for the bright orange King's Hawaiian displays. You scan the QR for a chance to instantly win tailgating prizes, and visit topsmarkets.com/Slider Sunday for all of your favorite slider recipes. All right, he's Ryan. I am Matt. We both got the Bills winning. We'll see how it all plays out at FedEx Field Sunday at 1 o'clock. If you are going to be in DC, come out and hang with us. We are going to be hosting a Q&A with Eric Wood, Eric Molds, Lee Evans, and Aaron Williams at Brighton, DC at the Wharf. It's a venue change. We're going to be at the Bullpen. Apparently the weather is going to be bad on Saturday, so we've moved things over to Brighton, DC at the Wharf, 949 Wharf Street, Southwest Washington, DC. Come out, hang out. We'll talk some Bills with you before and after, and obviously get a chance to listen to the Q&A with all those Bills legends. All right, he's Ryan. I'm Matt. We'll see you on Sunday. Take care, everybody.